we're going to open the Selectmen's meeting for this evening, Wednesday, May 1st, 2018. The first order of business, I'd like to observe a moment of silence for Norman Estabrook, who passed away recently. Mr. Estabrook was a member and leader of the Clinton Town Handicap Commission, and he will be sorely missed. Thank you for that. Next item, the first item on the agenda is public comment. Is there anyone here for public comment?
Mr. Chairman,
yes.
Just under public comment, I was going to wait to later in the meeting, but I figured I'd bring it up now. Just wanted to address a letter that was written in the item a couple weeks ago. There was a letter in the, I believe, to the editor 2 weeks ago in the item mentioning my name, I believe just the board in general and what we do. And I just wanted to address it because what I read from it, none of it was true. It comes from the same person who keeps writing. This is the second time this person has made up lies about me. I know he's distorted the board in the past as well. So he made some sort of reference that I created some sort of committee or something or other of beautification on some street, which I never did. So this it seems like it's just it's constant with this individual who just keeps up making up a lot of fiction. So I don't know why he's doing it. I think this all started over an earth removal permit about 2 years ago. Ever since then, it's been more lies after lies. So I just wanted to address it out there that anyone read it. It's not true. Yes, we do have goals and objectives on this board, and we do that. We look at it every meeting. It's not something that we solve in one meeting. These are something that if we do fix them or we address them, that's something that will get done over that period of time. So goals and objectives is not something that we have on there and it's going to get solved in one meeting. So, you know, I don't know what this individual's thought process is, but I don't think it's too sane. And the other thing I think this individual also mentioned was something about a dog park. That's another thing that we brought up. We addressed it at several meetings. We had people of interest, people came in, we had some good debate about it, some good discussion, some good ideas. We mentioned parks. Everyone that I know I talked to in the town, no one wanted it in their park, in their neighborhood park. I believe someone on the board, maybe it was me, I know I had brought it up, maybe some other people had brought it up as well. We had talked about putting it up on the other side of Rocher Farm, on the other side of near Willow Road, and people said, well, that's too far for a town of Clinton. That's 5.2 miles radius. So we did address it. It's not like we just fluffed it off and did nothing. We did have some good debate on it. But this individual constantly, you know, writing letters and making up stories, not only about the board, but you know, our town administrator, you know, just distorting facts, making up stories. So you know, it's you know, I almost feel embarrassed for the guy. It's very sad. So I don't know why he's doing it, but it's beyond ridiculous. So I just wanted to address it and let the people out there know that they did read the article. It's not true. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, I don't recall you making a suggestion that we have a town beautification project that only involved Greeley Street. I believe that was what the accusation was. Yeah. That we have a beautification problem and it only involved Greeley Street. And I don't recall anybody ever saying that. But anyway, so thank you for your public comment.
Mr. Chairman, just to follow up on that.
Yeah.
I wasn't really going to say anything because, lucky me, this is the first letter he's written that he hasn't named me specifically. But I support Selectman Akabuchi's comments. The man is incapable of speaking a truthful word. And he randomly attacks different members of this board simply because he's not happy with the work that we do here. I've got nothing more to say about it.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is a review of the minutes for April 17th, 2019. What's the pleasure of the board with regard to the minutes?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded to accept the minutes as read. Is there any discussion? Being none, all in favor?
Aye. Aye.
And opposed,
Aye.
motion's carried. Item 3 on the agenda is crabgrass LLC, and there is a host community agreement that has been negotiated, and we need to make a decision on, but we wanted to talk with them because they're proposing moving to the first floor?
Basement.
Basement.
To the basement. Okay. So, Michael, have you any, we're all set? What I said was fairly accurate?
Yes, it
I
was,
always want
Mr.
like
Chair.
to
I
check.
think they would work through town council and myself and came up with a similar agreement that the other companies had signed. However, it did, before the board finalized the document, I did want the applicants to be able to address their change of location with the board, just so that everyone's aware of it, and it's out front, and it's out in the public. So they are going to a different floor within the same building, but I just wanted to see if the board had any questions to comment on and have them come in to, for that purpose.
Are there any questions from the board about this?
I'd just like to ask a question that seemed to be going around, and I don't know the answer, so I'd just like to address it. Are any existing tenants being displaced?
No.
No.
Okay, thank you.
It's
Okay.
basically store cars down there.
They what?
Basically store cars down
Cars
there.
and-
Oh,
Yeah,
oh,
just
oh,
stuff like
okay.
that. Yeah.
Like box equipment and
Yeah,
stuff.
but there's
Okay,
no
you-
actually,
There's
You're gonna
nobody
move-
down there.
nobody down there, yeah.
You're gonna move the cars, I take
Yeah.
it?
Yeah,
There
All
was
right.
there was another company, I believe, on the first and second level using both those floors. Have they found another home, or do you know of?
Well, they don't need to find another home. We wouldn't have any impact on them. In fact, I
They're
know-
currently still there? Okay.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
I know, but Bob Rogers is, he's actually on the first floor, and he's actually gonna
So-
act as our
okay.
general
So
contractor.
you're using strictly just the basement?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
just for clarification, I know last time we spoke in January, the third floor seemed to
floor.
be
Yes.
an ideal location because one of the main concerns was smell, and you thought that it was going to help with ventilation. Is there a reason you're going to the basement?
Well, the cement floors are much easier to deal with, and it actually, just a better location and a better medium to be, putting tables on and things like that, so,
And water, I mean,
Yeah.
you're dealing with water, and as careful as we want to be, and we were going to put down like a vinyl flooring. There was a lot of wood on the third floor, and wood is, the enemy of moisture and vice versa. So the beauty of being in the basement, it's all cement. We have a lot of, smell mitigation techniques that we're going to utilize. Obviously, carbon has been done for, 200 years. It still works.
Yeah.
It's still one of the best ways to go, but we've got a lot of high-tech equipment. And then a lot of the infrastructure in terms of all the electrical boxes, all the plumbing, the fire extinguishing equipment, the sprinkler system was what I was looking for. That's all down in the basement as well. So the owner thought, you know what, this is better suited for down there, and I agree.
yeah, the ease of use is just
Sure.
astronomically
Better security,
better there.
too.
Yeah.
It wouldn't, just for clarification, because I've tried to get the answers around town, and I've spoken to some of the tenants there who can't get answers either. When you say the owner, has it sold? Because I keep hearing reports that, frankly, the report that I've heard is that the I don't know if it's a current owner or former owner, is waiting for this license to get through, and then the
We've
existing
s-
tenants are going to leave.
We've spoken with both.
What, the last part, you said in existing tenants are going to leave?
Yeah, they can't get any answers over there.
Oh, that definitely, because again, Bob, who I think you may even know, and it's just that we're going to be meeting him downstairs, we've had zero indication that any existing tenants would be required to leave,
Yes.
whether there's a change in ownership or not.
Right.
Why would they? They've got a lot of empty space there.
Sure,
The
that's what I
reality is you
thought
got the
too.
whole
Right.
third floor that's open, so I think they're happy with the tenants that they have there currently. We wouldn't have any impact on them. So,
So when we've
Yeah, yeah.
spoken, we've had communications with both
yeah,
parties, and no one's spoken about.
I will say
spacing
there's, you're right, there is some ambiguity, just I spoke with John Hogan
it. 'Cause I think they're in
yesterday.
negotiations still.
And I feel like it's not clear whether ownership, I don't think ownership has changed yet. As to whether it is, I can't say. I do know that we were under the impression that there was going to be a new owner, and that they embraced that not only that nobody was going to be leaving, but that, we would be tenants there. So that was certainly the level of feedback I had. But I couldn't give you a clear answer as to whether the deal's gotten fuzzy or, whatnot. It was definitely spoken as it was going to happen. And then the last time I spoke with John, I got a little bit of a hedge. That's as good as information I can give you.
Fortunately, you're not the only one who can't give me
Yeah,
a
I
straight
just
answer.
couldn't get a straight one for you on that.
Okay, any other questions or comments from members of the board? There being none, I believe that there is the issue of the host community agreement, which town council has negotiated. And I guess we're looking for a motion
Mr.
to
Chairman?
approve that agreement.
So move.
I'll second.
Motion's made and seconded to approve the host agreement as negotiated by town solicitor. Is there any discussion?
Well, Mr. Chairman, just for full disclosure, I mean, when I talked about this in January, I said my support, which I'm very supportive of it, was, you know, contingent on existing businesses, and there are several there, not losing their spot. And I'm in a bit of a pickle here because, you know, if those reports are true that there's an owner who wants to buy the place and only wants, you know, cannabis business there, and it's.
I haven't gotten that impression.
No, we got
Again,
actually, we got told the opposite. I want to be
yes.
clear on this. When Bob was the one who showed us around. He's on the first floor, right? So, you know, the feedback that I had with him and the discussions I had with him, and also in conjunction with John, was that nobody was going to be displaced. Now, I can't control what an owner ends up doing with their property, but
We're
again,
not
we have no
asking for
impact
any-
on. You know, we want people there. Having an empty building isn't really necessarily a great thing for all parties involved. So. I certainly wouldn't want to have something be contingent upon what, you know, an owner may do when we certainly haven't pushed for that in any way, shape, or form. Again, Bob's looking to be our general contractor, so the last thing I want to do is give the guy who's on the first floor a hard time. I mean, he's the custodian of the building. He knows it inside and out. And he and I really hit it off, and we had a good rapport. So certainly there's no intention or desire on our part, or from what I understand, certainly the current owner or any future owner, of displacing anyone.
We haven't gotten any indication of that.
No.
Just so
Quite the
you
opposite.
understand,
No,
I'm just advocating, as I would advocate for you when you're a business
Yeah,
in town.
sure.
I mean, I want to protect the people that are here. And,
Yep.
you know, I know they put a lot of their own money into renovating that first floor. Like you said, that building was being unused, and, you
Yeah.
know, they stuck their neck out a little bit. And, you know, frankly, if someone's seeing greener pastures, you know, and hanging them out to dry, just, you know, it's not the kind of climate I'm looking to put out there for when you want to do business in Clinton, as I don't think you guys would either. So,
Sure.
I
And,
just
but
wanna
again,
make sure
keep in
that
mind,
those-
there's a whole third floor that's wide open, so
Sure.
there would be, you know, you would say, well, greener pasture would be, well, because we were trying to squeeze people out so we'd have more space. No, I'm just
Or
saying,
maybe
you know,
he
that
wants
would
to
be
put
a
another
motivation,
pathway.
but if we were going, we'd go up to the third floor, there's just no need to, there's no reason to push anybody. That's not what we want. And again, I don't want to tick off Bob, he's going to be our contractor.
No, I hope this works out.
Yeah.
Okay, any other discussion? I would just say that, I mean, I don't think that we can hold a tenant responsible for what, not for what a landlord will do, but even more vague, what a landlord might do.
Right.
So anyway, if there's no other discussion, all those in favor of approving the host agreement
Aye.
and opposed, motion's carried. Congratulations
Best of
and
luck to
good
you.
luck.
Thank you so much,
Wherever
we
you
really
may like.
appreciate it.
Wherever you may light in the building.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Thanks again, we're off to the basement.
Yes,
Yes.
good luck there too.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Yep, have a great one.
Next item on the agenda is a Class 2 motor vehicle dealer license for 678 Main Street.
Just ask if we could hold that till next meeting, Mr.
That's the one for next meeting.
Table, all right.
Mr. Bayless is not here this evening. There was some communications snafu, and so with the permission of the board, we'll put that off till the next meeting. The next item on the agenda is a Class 2 motor vehicle license for 546 Main Street. We've received an application for expansion of a Class 2 motor vehicle dealer license from Jose Padilla and Hector Ibarra, doing business as New Beginnings Auto Service, to the abutting property at 546 Main Street. The new property is a vacant lot, which would give them more room to expand their inventory of vehicles. The planning board has approved the use of both sites for up to 45 cars. So, sir, I will turn it over to you if you have anything you would like to tell us.
Yes, just here to in regards to the 546, 556 expansion
Yeah,
on the vehicle, Class 2 vehicle license. And we've just gone through the board, and looks like we have sufficient space to carry out the 45 car license. And now we are seeing that next steps is kind of in the middle, in between whether we need a second Class 2 license for the whole entire property, because I believe it's got two numbers, like the 546, 556. So I'm just here to learn what next steps we can take in regards to that.
okay, and my mistake, I should have asked you to identify yourself. You are?
Hector Ibarra.
You're Mr.
Yep.
Rivera,
Yep,
okay.
I am.
So, Michael, this is basically a question of expanding his existing business into the lot next door, the contiguous lot.
Yes, right
and
next door.
increasing the number of cars.
Right, and town solicitor has done some research on that, so I think we turn it over to
Right.
Mr. Gibbons to.
My understanding, so he currently has a license for 12 vehicles for 556. Now he's looking to expand into 546. The parcel, even though it's defined as, it's two different addresses, it's one, in the registry, it's just one deed. One deed defines the entire parcel. I don't know if there's some site plan that was done where they divide up into two lots, but if you look at the deed, it was all transferred to the current owner as one piece of property, and we tax it as one piece of property. So I don't think you need here, since it's the same owner, one owner owns both 546 and 556, I don't think you would need a second license. I think you could have him turn in the license he has for the 12 and issue one license for the total amount, and that license would be issued against 546-5, is it 5 or 4?
46.
Yeah, 546-556. Because it's, you know, I don't know where, it's two addresses, but it's one piece of property.
Gotcha.
Can I add?
So basically, we would be issuing a new license?
Yeah, I think, you know, because the current license is out there is really just for 546.
Yes.
So you really would have to you could hand in the 546 license, issue one license, 546-556, for the entire, whatever it is, the total amount now, it's like 50.
Now, here's my question associated with that. A used car license, this is a hearing, is that right?
Yes.
Oh, this is a hearing, okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, so this is a hearing, okay. All right. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, I did, I also I've been speaking to the owner too, just to make sure we're in the right path. He did tell me that even back in the 80s when he purchased the property, he was given the actual two numbers for one property. And I tried to ask him, can we go back in time, and he didn't have any answers, but he does own, what was technically, I don't know at this point if it was 546 or 556, but the 26,000 feet was just one property, but it stayed like that forever.
Okay.
That's accurate. If you look at the deed into the current owner, it defines the entire property, given all the meets and bounds, and it's roughly 26,163 square feet. And if you look at the plan that the engineer did, that you'll see it contains the 26,000 feet. So again, it has two addresses, but if you look at what's recorded in the registry of deeds, it's really one parcel, and that's how we tax it in the town right now.
Okay.
And
So this
Mr.
is
Chair, we had asked the applicant to appear before the planning board to try to give for the planning board to give any input or recommendation on the request on the number of vehicles. And apparently, they seemed comfortable with the layout that the engineer had done on that site plan. Because it is a lot of cars, it's gonna be, a tight intersection with quite a few vehicles, so, but they seemed to feel that they could all fit on that site.
Okay, any questions from members of the board for Mr. Rivera? There being none, and this being a public hearing, is there anyone, aside from Mr. Rivera, to testify in favor of this motion to actually give out a new license to take the old one? Appears to be no one. Is there anyone here to testify against? Again, there appears to be no one. So we'll close the public hearing, and what's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we grant the new license for 45 cars at the identified property.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded to grant the license for the 45 cars utilizing both of the vacant lots there. Is there any discussion from members of the board?
Mr. Chair, quickly on the
Yes.
discussion, I just want to know what the, and I'm all for it, I support it, I hope it's a success, and I'd like to support other boards in the town of Clinton. 45 cars seems like a lot for those two lots. Is there any, I guess, is there any mechanism, Mike, in those licenses, if this seems to be too much, that we can have them come back in and address it?
Oh, sure, the board at any time can
Okay.
call in an applicant and hold a hearing for violations or concerns or problems and adjust the license accordingly. So
Okay.
absolutely. Or vice versa, you could start lower and then go higher too.
Right, okay.
Under the statute, the board has broad discretion there, so like the town administrator just said, if there's a, once he starts getting vehicles on there, and there's a concern about safety, or whatever the concern may be, you can call him in anytime. and have a
Anytime,
hearing.
okay,
Yep,
all right,
very broad.
thank you. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Okay, any other discussion? There being none, all in favor?
Aye.
And opposed, motion's carried. Congratulations and good luck.
Congratulations, best of luck to you.
Thank you very much, appreciate it. Can I ask one question?
Sure.
It was, the license, do I have to, it sounds like I had to apply for a new one, but are we just expanding the recent?
No, we
No.
just gave you a new license.
Oh, okay, so I get a new one.
You're gonna get a new one, and the old one, you're gonna turn in,
Oh, okay.
okay?
Yep.
All right.
Two.
And Mr. Chair, we'll have the applicant for the other license in next meeting. This was a similar situation. They're expanding to an adjacent abutting property. However, on that one, they're two separate lots, so that one would have to be treated a little bit differently. So I'll invite them in for the next meeting, and Mr. Gibbons has information on that one as well, too.
Right,
Thank you.
okay. Next item on the agenda is a livery license renewals. The Board of Selectmen has received the following applications for the annual livery license renewals. Jacqueline Baldessari, doing business as the Taxi Livery Ride for 423 Water Street in Clinton. What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we grant a livery license to Jacqueline Baldassari, doing business as the Taxi Livery Ride for 423 Water Street in Clinton.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to issue the license to Jacqueline Baldessari. Is there any discussion? Being none, all in favor?
Aye.
And opposed, motion's carried. Next item on the agenda is the draft annual town meeting warrant. Town meeting will be June 3rd, 2019 at 7 p.m. And we have the draft warrant. Would you like to go over the articles? Let's see, Michael, the standard articles are, well, looks like,
1 through.
huh?
Standard articles use the first
8,
8. Okay.
except Article 7. Is there something new in Article 7? That's the
Chapter
The
revolving
revolving
funds.
funds, that would be an annual article going forward. Yep,
okay.
so, and Article 8 is the funding for the senior tax rebate program.
Yeah, Mr. Chair?
Yeah,
If you recall, the tax, what do we call that? I try and put it out of my mind.
Tax
Yeah,
classification.
the two recommendations, one got a lot of publicity, the second one didn't, and it was to maximize the opportunities for rebates. I've spoken to the Board of Assessors, and we had a meeting with the Finance Committee tonight, and we're proposing to double this number from 15,000 to 30,000 to hopefully
where are
double.
we here?
This is Article 8.
Yeah, Article 8, okay.
Right. So we're going to move that up to 30,000 to hopefully double the amount of potential participants in the senior tax rebate program. That money comes from the overlay reserve account, so it's not an added burden on the taxpayers. but hopefully an added resource for seniors who might be under distress.
Okay. There's no need for us to approve these articles tonight, right, Michael? We don't need to approve them tonight.
No,
but we
no,
can.
that's right, Mr. Chair. I think what I wanted to do tonight was kind of run down all the articles and have the board members kind of discuss if they feel they need more information on
Yeah, okay.
different ones. I know there's a lot of them from the Public Works Director. There are certain bunches, you know, you kind of bunch them into the reoccurring standard articles, and then bunch them into finance articles, and then administrative bylaw changes, zoning bylaw changes, and then generally the citizen petitions at the end. So we kind of break them into categories, but the board doesn't need to approve it till the next meeting on the 15th. So if there are department heads or further explanations or more information that you need, the next meeting I can bring in those departments to address the board. So I wanted the board to run through them and then give any feedback that we need for the next meeting to finalize.
And if I can just comment on that too, and you'll know, some of these are almost just like placeholders too. There's a lot, there's a lot of language we still have to put in there, but that language will be obviously put in there between now and the meeting on the 15th.
Okay. So basically, if you go back where we started from, the articles 1 through 8 are basically the standard articles that perhaps we can, with the exception of Article 8, sort of dispense with the reading of.
Sure.
Okay, just in terms of, because there's 50-something of these, which is quite a number.
And I think we got a few more coming too.
Oh,
Most I've ever
wonderful.
seen.
Councilors is working on. So.
Article
We want
9,
to get our money's worth out of the
right.
town moderator.
Yeah.
Send it off.
All right, so Article 9, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate or transfer from available funds the sum of, and there's just a blank there, or any other sum for the health insurance. And Article 10 is, again, no money article as of yet, and that is for the stabilization fund. I assume are we going to be discussing that in the later issue with the budget discussion
Yes,
issue?
Mr. Chairman.
So just for everybody's edification, we are going to be discussing that in some detail. Article 11 is a transfer from the landfill enterprise fund, return earnings, and that number is also blank, and that is a transfer into the capital projects, infrastructure, and improvement stabilization funds. This is, because we're capping the landfill ourselves, the revenues from that accrue to the town, and we do have to demonstrate to the state that we have enough money in the landfill account to keep that capping and other activities going, but excess revenues are transferred to this capital projects and infrastructure fund. And so that's to put some new money in at the beginning of next year, and we're also going to be talking about spending some of that money this year. Any comments or anything from members of the board?
No, you're right, Mr. Chair, just as you said, it's blank right now. We're just trying to finalize, work that number based on, as you indicated, some of that is going to be used for the next phase of the landfill and other operations, and whatever is left over as a true surplus, we can put in that number to transfer to the infrastructure account. So you're right.
Article 12 is related, and it's transferring $2,560,000 from the enterprise fund retained earnings account, and it's for transferring it to the landfill closure reserve. So that's the money that we have to have in reserve to demonstrate to the state that we can continue with the project.
Right.
And that these figures have no impact on the tax rate. They're not coming from the tax rate. Article 13 is a $2,317 to be expended by the Board of Selectmen for the following unpaid bills. Wagonin's All Memorials, $1,777, and Darrell Sutterly, $540. So those are unpaid bills. Article 14 is to vote to raise and appropriate a certain amount of money, said sum of money to be expended by the Board of Selectmen for a lump sum payment of the early retirement incentive or act in any manner related thereto. So what is the story with this?
Sure, Mr. Conley, if you want.
Mr. Conley.
Mr. Chairman, that's one of the items we'll be discussing under the
Okay.
subcommittee report, if that's all right.
Yep, that's fine. To see if the town, Article 15, to see if the town will will vote to appropriate from the PEG Access and Cable Related Fund the sum of $225,000. That sum to be used for the support of the cable access related services. So this is cable money that is presently in reserve
Right,
that we want to transfer into an active account so it can be used.
right.
Any questions or comments? Article 16. Article 16 is an interesting one, and it is to see if the town will vote to authorize the Board of Selectmen to acquire by gift, purchase, or eminent domain any and all permanent and temporary easements for the purpose of repairing or improving or reconstructing High Street and/or sidewalks, drainage facilities, et cetera, et cetera. So this is in anticipation of a later article, Article 17, where we're going to be looking for some money to do a fairly substantial project on High Street. And to do that, we need, as most town constructions, we need permanent and temporary easements. Any questions about that?
Just to address one item, Mr. Chairman, that's
Yes.
a subject of conversation with the Finance Committee as to the funding mechanism for that. And the conversation is going around the idea of using the landfill capital fund to fund a portion of it and to fund the payments if any money's borrowed for that project out of that same capital improvement fund.
Right. Okay, Article 17, I do have something to say about this, sort of related to what Mr. Yakabuchi alluded to at the beginning of the meeting, and that is one of the things that Mr. Townsend said in his letter to the item is that we have been talking about doing improvements on High Street for years and years, and yet no improvements have been done. I would like to say that that is an absolutely accurate statement. I have been on the board this time around 8 years, going on 9, and so we've been talking about it off and on for that length of time. And there's a reason for that. Here we go. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate and borrow, transfer from the stabilization fund or the sum of $4,500,000 or any other sum, said sum to be expended by the Board of Selectmen for the installation of decorative streetlights and streetscape improvements in the downtown area, including all related costs. So we're talking about the High Street and Church Street from the corner of Walnut all the way down to Main. And we have been talking about this for a very long time. And the reason is $4,500,000. One does not just snap one's finger and come up with that amount of money. Everything has got to be approved and ratified by the Finance Committee, but it is extremely likely that all of that money will come from the Capital Improvement Fund, which we talked about earlier. That is the fund from capping the landfill. It is $4,500,000 that is not coming out of the tax rate. But we had to wait around for 8 or 9 years and plan for 8 or 9 years. It is very easy to sit around and say, why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? Here's why we don't often do things right away. $4,500,000. That's a pretty good hefty sum. We have waited and planned, and we're going to be able to do it without any impact to the taxpayer. I suppose we could have tried to done it quickly. Mr. Townsend would have been very pleased to have $4,500,000 added to the tax bill that he could have taken out of his pocket. Would have been done much quicker. But anyway, anything else?
Just, actually, Mr. Chairman, I think Mr. Townsend's recommendation was to take a wrecking ball to High Street, as I recall.
Well, that would cost more than $4,500,000, I believe. So anyway, Article 18. See if the town will raise and appropriate $100,000. Said sum to be expended by the Clinton Public Schools for the purchase of textbooks and technology. And so that's for textbooks and technology. I think it's a fairly standard article. It usually is approved. Any comments? Just jump in. I mean, on Article 19, $640,000 to be expended by the Clinton Public Schools for the repair or replacement of the roof at the Clinton Middle School. Article 20, $100,000 for Clinton Public Schools for the purchase and installation of an emergency generator. Article 21, $140,000 or any other sum to be expended by the Department of Public Works for the purchase of a new 1-ton truck with catch basin cleaner. So that's a necessary piece of equipment. Article 22, capital projects and infrastructure improvements, blank number. Said sum to be expended by the Department of Public Works for road resurfacing and improvements on High Street, Berlin Street, and Greeley Street, or act in any matter related thereto. This is another thing. I know that people justifiably complain about the roads. Michael, what do we get every year from the state to fix the roads? $400,000?
Just less than that, yeah.
Less than $400,000 we get, so every road that is fixed for in excess of $400,000 goes on the taxpayers. As a result of the capital infrastructure improvement funds, significant improvements for High Street, and that's, I believe, from the corner of High and Water down to Plain. Berlin Street and Greeley Street, all major streets, those will be coming out of that capital projects fund and not impact the tax rate. 23, $200,000 to be expended by the Department of Public Works for drainage system improvements on Pleasant Street, Marshall Street, Liberty Street, Summit Street, Wilson Street. Ta-da. 24. Again, the Land Enterprise Fund, so that's the Landfill Enterprise Fund. We're looking for $1 million out of that fund to be expended by the Department of Public Works for South Meadow Pond dredging and Phase 1 landfill closure project. So part of the landfill closure project is, as a result of some very complicated hydrology, having nothing to do with the failure of the old cap on the landfill. Iron has been leaching into South Meadow Pond, and we are under a consent order to clean that up. And so that is also being funded through the landfill account, and it's $1 million, and it is something we are committed to. Plus, we want the pond in good shape. Article 25, $200,000 for water meter replacements. So that's pretty clear.
Yeah, on that one, Mr. Chair, that is asking for the money that was in the water meter replacement project. This is left over.
Oh, all right.
So just asking for reauthorization, because town meeting already appropriated that money for water meters. So just asking to reappropriate that money for a inflow and infiltration study. And if there was any further still left over, could do sewer system improvements based on that study.
Okay.
So that would just help use that money that's already been appropriated just for a different use.
Okay, so that's $200,000 there, and that again is not out of the tax rate. So that's good. Article 26, $400,000 for the Department of Public Works for sewer and infiltration study. So that's on top of the 200,000.
Exactly.
Okay.
This is going to be a large project, and so partially would be paid out of that, and then the 400, and based on the 600, if it comes in a little bit lower, then they would use whatever the difference would be for sewer system repairs.
And this is basically state mandated requirements.
Exactly. State and
Yeah.
federal regulations, exactly, Mr.
Yeah.
Chair. Yeah.
Article 27, transfer from the Water Sewer Enterprise Fund the sum of $500,000 to be expended by DPW for painting and mixing valves at the Burden Hill and Mulberry water tanks. So it's working on the valves at those.
Yeah, I think they're going to replace some of the valves and then paint areas that need repainting, and then replacement of valves up in those tanks as well.
Article 28, to see if the town will vote to raise or appropriate $50,000. This is for the DPW for dam removal projects at the Weeki Peaky property in Sterling. So this has been a long going project. The dams either need to be repaired or removed, and it's much cheaper to remove them.
Right, Mr. Chair. And this is, I think, something that the DPW superintendent had put on for discussion, and certainly that's why I suggested if the board wanted him in the next meeting. It isn't something that has to be done right away, but at least it would address some of the smaller earthen dams that don't have a major impact. So there's some big dams there, which, there's going to have to be further discussion about what is going to happen to those dams, because if they were taken down, it certainly would have a big impact. But these are the smaller dams, which wouldn't have a substantial impact on that property if they were removed.
Okay.
But certainly it's just starting that discussion. We do have a study that's done, a dam safety study that's done every couple of years that we're mandated to do with recommendations for improvements or repairs. And the question is going to be in the future, do we want to keep paying for dam studies and dam repairs, or if there isn't a public purpose for those dams to take them down? So those are kind of discussions the board needs to have. This would just, it's only $50,000, so it would only just kind of take down some of the smaller ones. But Mr. McGowan at least wanted to put out there for discussion, and if it's something, we wanted to hold on for next year, that could be done as well, or if it's something you wanted him to explore this year, so.
Well, if he'd like to come and talk with us about it.
Okay.
You got to start somewhere.
Okay, I'll have him for the next meeting then.
Where am I here? I've lost my place.
29.
I'm on 29, good. That is $200,000 for the police chief for the purchase and installation of a cloud-based records management software system for police and fire report. So this is a piece of software. Do you have anything more to say other than that, Michael?
No, I think it's just something over the last couple of years that they've been reviewing. They've been looking at vendors and looking to kind of upgrade for the future. This product here, there's a cloud-based product a lot of departments are going to that they like and they think will work for them. Police and fire tie into it. They do all their reporting, all their record keeping is part of that. And their system they have is very old, and they're just getting nervous on not wanting to lose all those documents or accessibility to those documents. And it's a big number, so I know the chief has been you know, just trying to kind of go along, get by with it. But I think they're at the point now where they feel they should really look at upgrading that and doing something that'll bring them into the future. It's a mainframe system they have right now. This is a cloud-based system that'll be continually updated and monitored. And the system they have right now, a lot of departments are moving away from it, so they're concerned as to what support will be there for them in the future if they're kind of one of the last batches that are left using the old software. So.
Okay. Any questions? Okay, Article 30 is $550,000 to be used by the fire department for the purchase of a new fire engine. Is that a pumper? What is that? What sort of engine is that?
I believe so, yeah, I believe it's a pumper. It's one I just pulled out of the chief's capital budget request that he had in for FY 2020. So again, if you need the chief in to give further discussions and the impact of, as he mentioned, I think during his budget presentation, that it takes probably a year or better to get the vehicle into the station.
Yeah.
So I think if he gets the authorization, he can work on it over the next year instead of losing another year. But certainly, a lot of these articles, a lot of big numbers that we're talking about here. So it's, if you need anything further, any of the department heads are certainly willing to come in to give further information.
Well, I would think that we would need to, specify in the final article what kind of truck we're talking about.
Yeah.
Does anybody feel the need to have the fire chief come in and talk about that, or? Okay. I think if he says he needs a truck, it's probable that he needs a truck. Article 31, $10,000 to be expended by the Clinton Emergency Management Agency for a purchase of a four-wheel drive vehicle.
This is just looking to get kind of a used vehicle, but something better than what they have right now, to be able to move around their equipment and use during incidents. I think there'll be still ongoing discussions with the Finance Committee, but I think the Finance Committee was looking to put it as a line item in the budget because it's a small amount, so it may not need its own article if it's part of their budget. So that may be something by the next meeting we'll work out as to whether that will stay on or be removed.
Article 32 is $7,500 for Bigelow Library for the purchase and installation of a heating cooling system for the main reading room of Bigelow Library.
Yeah, so last year they were having problems with their cooling system upstairs, and they ended up getting transfer from the Finance Committee to get that replaced. So now the one on the main floor is in similar condition, so they wanted to be ahead of this one and not get to a critical point where it breaks down in the middle of summer and they don't have the ability to cool the building. And I think they may even have had closed last summer because of those conditions. So they're just asking for that money. And again, whether $7,500 will be in an article or whether it be part of their budget, I think the Selectmen members could address that with the Finance Committee.
Okay.
Could it even be part of the facility department's capital improvement plan?
Oh, right, that's a good idea too, right, exactly.
Okay, Article 33, that is for the Conservation Commission, and it is to authorize the filing of special legislation to allow for the appointment of 2 alternate members of the Conservation Commission, and that was requested by the Conservation Commission.
Right, Conservation Commission was looking for more members to have in reserve if they don't have a quorum. The statute doesn't address it, so the town council had did some research and did find that there are other communities that have done this through special legislation. So asking for the authorization for the Selectmen to file a home rule petition with our state rep and senator.
Okay, and Article 35 is to see if the town will vote to amend the administrative bylaws to add the following new section: the use of capital projects and infrastructure improvement stabilization fund.
Mr. Chair,
So we're looking for more language on that.
did we skip
Yes.
34?
Did I skip 34? Oh, I
For
did.
the retirement board?
To see if the town will
Sorry.
accept the provisions of Chapter 32, Section 20A, to indemnify the members of the Clinton Retirement Board for the expenses of any civil action which is being defended by an attorney employed by said board or act in any manner. And the Retirement Board has put this.
Right, the retirement board was asking, there is more language to this. This was kind of just a placeholder, and we'll have more to it. But what they have outside counsel, the retirement board uses, and something that he had brought to their attention, that if there's a action being taken against the board for their duties as a retirement board, not an individual or doing something that they shouldn't have, but if it's an action by the board and they are being sued, that this would indemnify those members personally from any harm. I don't know.
Yeah, what it really does, it treats, you know, right now, if the Board of Selectmen, for example, was to get sued and you were all to be named individually, you'd be represented by town council, and if there was a settlement, the town would pay that. That treats now, if the retirement board was to get sued and they were to be named individually, we treat them the same way. In other words, even if there was a settlement, it wouldn't come out of their pocket, it would come out of the retirement board or town's pocket. So it just treats them really as an employee of the town, providing they're acting within their capacity as a member of the retirement board. If it's something outside of that that's intentional, which would be the same for this board too, there'd be no indemnity.
Then we have a series of articles, Article 35, amending the administrative bylaws. One is a new section on the use of capital projects and infrastructure improvement stabilization fund. So this is the one we're talking about using for these projects.
Right, exactly, yeah.
And what's it basically going to say?
Right, yeah.
Do we know?
I think what the special legislation required that, we were asking as part of the special legislation that the money would be spent with guidelines as developed by the Board of Selectmen. But the way that it was passed is they would just like to see those guidelines kind of incorporated as a
Into the
bylaw
bylaws,
or ordinance
okay.
of the town.
Yeah.
So by accepting this, then it would allow that kind of, everyone will know what the standards are for that.
So
for that.
we will have,
Yeah,
we will
so-
have those standards.
Yeah, we're putting together kind of a draft for the board to
Okay.
see, how you might want to tweak that, or
Okay.
what type of, or if you have any, input, certainly give me a call if you have any, a certain threshold or a certain type of spending, or, we want to try to incorporate as much as we can. We don't want kind of all little minutia coming out of that, but at the same time, you want to ensure that it's one-time monies and that it's a fair, fair distribution for all types of projects or departments.
Yeah, so the plan will be to come up with some type of initial framework for the bylaw. It's something that probably, it probably will be amended somehow next year, because it's, we're kind of learn as we go along. But we've got to come up with some parameters right now, because that's what the special legislation dictated.
Do we have to approve this before we actually spend the money in the earlier articles, or?
I think if we do it, it'll be on the same town meeting.
All right.
But the only, the issue there, I think we can do it contemporaneous, but the problem is that when you have a bylaw amendment or introduce a new bylaw, that's got to go to the AG for approval, so,
So you can get the appropriation authorization, which would give the board the ability to spend the money, but you may not be able to spend it until the bylaw is approved by the Attorney General. So it just takes them usually the summer. If we have a town meeting in June, usually by the end of the summer, they have it.
They're very good. They turn it around pretty quickly.
Article 26 is another administrative bylaw change to revise the duties of the Bigelow Free Library Board of Trustees.
Yeah, on that one there, that's just the bylaws currently right now for the Library Board of Trustees they're obsolete. They're from years ago. So what they've done is they've come up with they've taken, there's like 6 provisions in there right now, 6 different sections. It's only like a page. And they've narrowed that down to 3 sections and updated it. So all that language will be in there for the board to see. So we'll get you, some of these I can get you drafts, probably next week. So you'll have them. I'll email them out to you so you can do some leisurely reading at night.
Article 37 is amend the administrative bylaws. Article 3, Section 11, to establish new guidelines relative to disposition of surplus town property.
Right. And on that, Mr. Chair, that is, again, trying to look at something that's a little bit more modern and updated as to how departments can get rid of unused or unneeded equipment. It's come up from, I think, like 3 different departments this year have asked about it, and all the bylaw, there's a state law for large purchases. I think anything maybe $10,000 might be the threshold for the state on the state procurement laws, but up until that point, it's up to local guidelines, and the local bylaw states that anything beyond $500 needs to come for review and approval to the Board of Selectmen. So if a department has, you know, a bunch of old furniture, like at the school, if they have a bunch of old classroom furniture and they just want to, they bought new stuff and they want to get rid of it, if it's valued more than $500, they can't do it without getting approval from the selectmen. So we just thought if maybe we just get up that threshold or put some guidelines in there that certain things they could do on their own without having to come through the board. Just pricing on things, you know, has changed over the years from when this was
Right.
originally put into our bylaw many, many decades ago. So, and the state has updated their procurement bylaws for that same thing, guidelines. So now, best business practices is up to $10,000, where it was much lower before. RFP is up to $50,000, it was at 25 before. So the state is recognizing that as well. So since it's come up, you know, I mean, certainly it's always probably been, you know, somewhere in the background, but I've had 3 different departments call me saying, how do I get rid of X, Y, and Z? And I said, well, if it's more than $500, you gotta go to the selectmen, you gotta get approval, we have to offer it to other departments, we have to, you know, put out a bid to see if anyone from the town, from the public would want to give us money for it, and at the end of that process, if it's no value, then you got to do this, this, and this. So it's kind of a cumbersome process for something that might be worth, you know, $500 or $600. So.
Article 38, again, amend the administrative bylaws relative to setting construction hours of operation to limit a butter noise impact of undesirable times.
And again, this is just kind of a sentence placeholder, but this had just been brought up to me by the building inspector that in the subdivision control bylaw, there are times of construction that you have to work within, timeframes, but within our zoning bylaw or administrative bylaw, there aren't any parameters. So if there's a one-off project that people are doing, there's no really enforcement. If somebody's up there at 6 o'clock on a Sunday morning, there's no enforcement that the building inspector has to shut them down. So he tries to work with people and tries to make sure they are sensitive to their neighbors' concerns, but there's no provision in there. So again, it was just being put forward as an idea to discuss as to what would be a solution. I, again, don't have exact wording of how that would be worded or where it would be placed. Because if you just put it in the zoning bylaw, then that would only affect special permits or variants of the zoning bylaw. So would it be something that needs to go, I think the planning board's outside counsel suggested it would probably be an administrative bylaw change. So again, these are, you know, a lot of things that with the once a year time for town meeting that, you know, departments kind of start think of, here's our opportunity to bring these forward. So it's just kind of bringing it forward for the board to review, discuss, and a lot of these aren't, you know, are ongoing issues that aren't critical for next month's town meeting. It could be next year's town meeting as well. So it's just something to debate.
I'm not optimistic that one's gonna stay on. There's a lot, you know, it's not as simple as it sounds. It's like, you know, commercial, you know, if you got a couple, you know, you and your buddies are roofing a house on a, you know, late, 6 o'clock or something, is that gonna be a violation? So there's in concept, it's fine, but there's a lot of language here that you have to be careful in enforcement. So, you know, if we can come up with some language, we'll certainly do it, but there's some work that has to be done there.
Mr. Chairman, just if I may, on that particular topic.
Yeah.
I am a contractor. I've probably had 2 permits in the town of Clinton in the last 25 years, maybe 3. So I'm not advocating on this for my own personal interest, but it would have to be very well written, very clear to avoid having, nobody wants noise in their neighborhood at all. People don't want weed whackers on Saturday. They don't want, they might be having a barbecue on a Saturday. They don't want any disruptive noise in their neighborhood. So it would have to be a very clear, well-written article to be useful to the town.
Okay. Article 40 is a zoning bylaw, and I imagine that that is from the planning board.
39.
39? Oh, 39 is administrative bylaw relative to the adoption of a stretch code for building permits, and that, I do remember, is as a result of the green initiative that we've signed on to.
Right.
And
So
we need
again,
to-
just put it on for discussion, because I know after that last meeting, the board had other agenda items, so there wasn't really
Yeah.
a discussion of whether they want to do it or not. So I
Well,
just
we'll
put
have
it
to
on.
have more, it would be, would the people be able to see what a stretch code is? Or is this it?
Well, no, well, there would be a little bit more language
Yeah, yeah.
than this, but I don't know, it wouldn't be very lengthy. I think they had given us some draft language, but it was
Okay.
only a couple of sentences.
Oh, okay.
So, I mean, if there's something more that we need to do, certainly, let me know. And with our website now this year, we can do like a spotlight on the town meeting stuff in the budget and put up graphics and different things that, would be easy to do. So certainly whatever information we want to get out there, we have the ability to do it a lot easier this year.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
So this one would fall to us to defend? This would be ours.
I'm sorry.
If we're answering questions at town meeting, this one's on us?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we should
Somebody
Somebody
should
should
know
get
what
the
they're
story
talking
straight.
about.
Right.
Right.
I
Okay.
guess that's what I was trying to get
Yeah.
at.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, Article 40. This is from the, I assume it's from the planning board. It's a zoning bylaw. An application for a special permit or variance to perform work as set forth shall be accompanied by an approved site plan. In the alternative, any special permit or variance granted for work set forth herein shall contain the following conditions. The work described herein requires the approval of a site plan by the Clinton Planning Board pursuant to section 9400 of the zoning bylaws. Any conditions imposed by such site plan approval shall also be conditions of this special permit, variance, or action. Okay, so,
And again, what this came up with, and again, I can get more information if necessary, but this came up in the zoning bylaws. There's a requirement that when you're going for a variance or special permit, to also go for a site plan review to the planning board.
yeah.
It's in one section, but under the section where it says application for a special permit, it doesn't state it there. So applicants have come up in question that why they have to do a site plan review. It doesn't say it. This section that I'm applying for special permit, it doesn't say it in this section. But there's another section that references it, so it's not clear. So when people are applying, they don't think they have to do it, but they really do. So there was just a suggestion that if that was put into this section as well as the other section, that people know when they read it, yeah, this is a requirement of the process.
So basically, this article doesn't change the requirements of a special permit or variance. It just clarifies for the applicant that it needs to be done.
Exactly. It's just trying to put it in another spot to give it
That's
a reinforcement.
That's a completely new section, 9390, it's adding at the end of this, in the section about special permits, but it's not creating a new requirement.
The
requirement's
requirement
there,
already exists.
But you gotta go, if you just look at the special permit section, you wouldn't see it, but if you go to the site plan review, then it ties back. So this just kinda connects the dots, really.
Again, nothing that's critical, but just the thought that the issue came up this past year, so there was just a thought, could this language help clarify it to the applicants? That's all. So.
Article 41. This is to amend the zoning bylaws with regard to the limited number of marijuana retail licenses. And the planning board shall not issue more special permits for marijuana retail licenses than the number that is XX% of the liquor licenses. So that is sort of looking at language that mirrors the state law.
No, what this is it's our current bylaw, but there's currently a 20% limit on the number of retail licenses, so there was just discussion amongst the board about maybe changing that.
Okay.
So this is just a placeholder to say, do you want to do it or not do it? Because again, being town meeting's the only opportunity to do that. So if the board wanted to create more retail cannabis licenses, this would be the
So
mechanism
if
to
we
do it.
want to do that, we have to come up with a number.
Right.
Okay.
Just clarification, Mr. Chairman, because I think was at my initiative
Yeah.
to have that conversation. If the board was so inclined to change this requirement at any level, isn't there a planning board process where they have to have a public hearing?
Yes.
And would there be time enough to do that if this were proposed?
Yeah, I'll double check the time frame. But they are also, the next article is from the planning board that they're doing for the multifamily zoning bylaw. And they just had a workshop on that last week, and they're finalizing that language. So I'm assuming they need to do the same for that. So I'm assuming they haven't done that hearing yet. So any other zoning changes, they would all do in that lump sum in that one hearing that they do for their multifamily. So, but I'll double check the time frame on that.
Do you know off the top of your head what the percentage would be to add 2 more retail licenses?
Well, we have, right now, we have 9.
2.
We have 9, so it would be a percentage of.
No, we only have 2, right, the bylaw only allows 2 retail marijuana
Right,
licenses.
right.
And that's based on a 20%.
20% of 9,
So,
so it rounds up to 2.
so to get it to 4,
Yeah.
it would be around 40% would be the number. Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
Article 42, to see if the town will vote to amend the zoning bylaws relative to the creation of multifamily housing. Article, anything
Sorry.
on that?
Yeah, do we have a ballpark on that, or like, what's the gist of that one?
Yeah, I haven't been involved in that process, so I don't really know. What I can do is tomorrow I'll ask Mr. Duffy if they have any draft language that I can send out to the board members as soon as possible. Like I said, I know they did have a workshop last week to try to finalize it, so I'm sure they must have some language that they're working off of. They had a consultant that was doing that work and coming up with a proposal for them. So they were doing kind of a input session last week to finalize that draft. So I'll see if he has wording on it, and I'll send it out as soon as I can.
Mr. Chairman, if I may,
Sure.
this is related to the moratorium that was approved at the last town meeting, and its just is to restrict or limit multifamily housing in the R2 district.
I believe so, right.
Article 43, to see if the town will vote to declare real property owned by the town and located at 329 High Street and 172 Sterling Street as surplus property with the intent of providing for the disposition of these properties by means of a request for proposal. Now, Michael, these properties are, I assume, is 329 High Street, the old gas station down there at the end of the corner of High and Water?
The old Jeans Auto.
The old Jeans Auto. Well, I'm older than you. I remember it as a Jenny station.
Well, there you go. Dating yourself now,
It was
Michael.
a Jenny station. The Sullivan family ran that Jenny station. How do you like that?
And Supernut, right?
And the other one is Superdot, the old
Right.
Superdots.
Right.
Okay.
So with advice by town council?
Yeah, so both these properties, were taken by the town, tax takers. One of the ways to dispose of those properties now is through the RFP process. But in order to do that, at town meeting, you have to declare those as surplus properties. Then that would allow us to go out and seek proposals from potential buyers. Mr. Duffy feels that would be that's an avenue that we should pursue with these 2 properties. So that's the reason for this article. You can't go out for an RFP unless you get town meeting approval.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Approving this and getting authorization to get an RFP doesn't preclude the town from developing, for example, the Jeans Auto parcel as as open space. if
No,
you
no,
so
I mean, you
choose.
go off, and even if you, you get on this path, you get approval, and you get sent out RFPs, you don't even have to, you don't have to march down this path.
I think we've done this in the past with properties, other properties, to get them on the RFP list, haven't we, in the past, town meetings?
We have, it's been a while
Yeah.
since we've, typically what we do is with tax taking property, we've auctioned them off.
Yeah.
We haven't done an RFP, at least, I don't think since I've been town council.
I know, like, years ago, we had the surplus property on some of those in town, like where
Yeah,
Rite
it's
Aid
probably
is
a
now.
I think we did it with Corcoran.
Okay.
Corcoran House is-
I know we did it before, I remember
Yeah.
seeing us doing
Yeah.
RFPs with the
Yeah.
old property.
Yeah, so with the auction process, it just goes to the highest bidder, and they do what they want once they take ownership. But on these properties, because of the impact of their location, either to gateway into the town or gateway to the downtown High Street, there was some thoughts about maybe putting parameters on how the property would be used in the future, and the new buyer would have to fall within those parameters. So this, again, as Mr. Gibbons said, it gives the board the authorization to RFP, but if there's other better use, or go to auction, and that decision, I assume the board would still be able to hold that.
This just gives us the option to use the RFP.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Yep.
Okay. Article 44, to see if the town will vote to accept the private way known as Prescott Lane as a public way. Where is Prescott Lane?
Those are those
It's
new
top of
houses
Haskell.
that were built off of Prescott Street.
How does this,
Across Haskell.
how does this come to be? It seems like a scam.
What's that?
A developer comes into town, jams a cockamamie cul-de-sac, and then gives us the bill for the rest of the time. Whose idea was this?
The Department of Public Works had put this forward, indicating that they had met all the requirements of the road construction and whatever, regulations that they needed to do. So he just put it forward for the board, for the town meeting to review it. But again, if Mr. McGowan's here at the next meeting, he can.
It's
could ask
standard
him.
procedure
Yeah.
when one puts in a development,
Bad deal for the town.
that if the access road meets town standards,
Meets the specs.
it
right.
becomes a town road.
Well, because you have taxpayers living on the street. Just for the board's information, there's gonna be 5 or 6 other ones I'm adding, because the old, Bufton Farms and Nathan Heights, they've been in existence now for a while, those developments, we never accepted a lot of those roads and some open space that were part of those plans that comes to the town. So in order to clean those projects up, there's probably another 6 roads that we're gonna be putting on here to be accepted. It really should, we've already taken them over, they probably should have been accepted a couple, a year or 2 ago.
Put me down for no, Mr. Chair.
Oh, well, you have a chance to vote, but I mean, it's the way things are done. I mean, it wasn't underhanded or anything. He went through the process. He put in,
Putting in a road is
don't
no,
necessarily like it, but
yeah, putting in a road too is no easy thing. You have to meet a lot of specs to put in that.
To be accepted by the DPW is meeting the town specifications.
Well, I'm just saying we're gonna have to pay for it for the rest of the time now.
Yeah, just like every other town road
Just
and
like
an
every
approved
other town road.
subdivision in the town of Clinton. The battle was lost when the project was
I
approved.
understand.
And the people who reside on on those properties shouldn't be punished for ill feelings that were already approved by the town. The project was approved, and the people who bought those homes or live in those buildings shouldn't be penalized simply because
somebody's nose is out of joint. Article 45. See if the town will accept the donation of a property easement on Pondview Drive for the maintenance of a water line. Article 46. See if the town will provide an easement over town-owned land on South Meadow Road for access to a solar array on private property. And I seem to recall that
Yeah.
gentleman was in here, and he has a good,
Did we get any clarification on whether that would preclude us from developing solar on that land?
We haven't, there's been some follow-up since they were in here, and, that project could take some time. There's a lot of hurdles to get over there, but, speaking about this with the DPW superintendent, that would put this on anyway, just to have the easement there, you know, is this thing gonna happen next year? Absolutely not. There's a lot, you know, we haven't got many of those questions answered yet. I don't think there'd be any, us tying in, that's, obviously that's important, real important, but there's a lot of other hurdles that have to get over for them to even be able to do what they wanna do back there. But, you know, if they, regardless, it would get us electricity up there too. You know,
Right.
I mean, at a minimum, like Chris said, even that would be a benefit for him, you know.
Yeah, there's definitely something in it for the town if it
Yeah,
does.
there would be, but I'm, you know, there's a lot of hurdles to get over in that project to move forward. So we don't have much more information since, you know.
I would imagine there's a lot of regulations, stuff they have to meet and everything, and it's, like you say, it's gonna be a process.
Yeah, but who's gonna own the, and who's gonna own the poles, and who's gonna, even if it's underground, who's gonna be responsible for all of it?
Right,
So there's a
right.
lot of issues that have to
A lot of
be resolved.
liability.
So that project's, you know, early on, the only meeting really we've had is the meeting when those folks are in here, so.
Yeah.
Well, if that's the case, why is this article?
We just put, you know, it's a placeholder, it's on there, if the board doesn't wanna move forward this time, we certainly don't have to. But,
I mean, I'm not particularly opposed to it, I just
Yeah.
wonder if it's... Okay, Article 47 is a citizen's petition, and it is to authorize the Board of Selectmen to petition the general court for special legislation to grant the Chapter 138 all alcohol package store license to Super Summit Incorporated, which is at 1183 Main Street in Clinton. So that's a citizen's petition for changing a beer and wine license store to an all liquor license.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah,
For that article and the next one we're
Yeah.
about to read, is it legal to name the license recipient in a petition to the legislature?
I think if the legislature approves it, it's been done in the past.
To a specific applicant?
Right,
Would the
or
town be?
property.
Yeah, the way
Sometimes
the-
they'll give
to
it
the
to the
property.
property.
the way they're issuing now, I don't know how they, you know, when they do issue, they're issuing two, you know, it stays with the property. That's how they've been doing it most recently. When I say most recently, I haven't looked at it in a couple of years, but, you know, so in other words, it can't, and it has to stay there. So we wouldn't then have another license that we could give out anywhere.
I guess that answers my follow-up question was, would the town be better served if we had our own article petitioning, asking for permission to petition the court for 2 or 3 liquor licenses, and then if it's granted, this board award them to whatever applicants we deem suitable for the license? Is that, or the legislature wouldn't approve an application without the address?
I don't know, it depends, I guess, on the tone of the legislature. You know, every 2 years they get new members. They have done in the past to like cities of just giving them lump sum. Say, all right, here's 5 more, 10 more, whatever, because they run out. Other times, we've done this through the town of Clinton where it's specified a specific business. Other times that they've given it to a business, but like Ms. Gibbons said, attached it to the property. Other times they said it had to be for economic development purposes, and you had to show a reason how it's going to benefit to make revenue. So they have different kind of philosophies based on who's in the positions at the time. So I don't think that's a bad idea to say that we're at quota. We've been at quota for a lot of years, even over quota. You know, could the town, can Clinton get 5 more? You know, 2 years ago, there was a Municipal Modernization Act where they were going to remove that quota and leave it up to the local licensing authority. And through our associations, we were getting information that it was almost a done deal, and at the end, it got pulled from that provision. So I know there's some support there for the legislature to allow towns to make those decisions. So if we go in with just a blanket request, maybe they'd be amenable to it. You know, if you don't ask, you don't know. So certainly it's something I would consider.
I'd like to suggest that this board consider adding its own article seeking 2 or more additional licenses for the purposes of economic development, so that if the opportunity presented itself, if a viable developer wanted to come into the town and either renovate an existing building into the type of business that we want to have on High Street or someplace else in town, that we had a license available to give out, I guess is what I'm, rather than.
I would set the number a little bit higher than this.
Yeah.
So we have it, we have
Yeah.
a kitty to go to if we need
So,
it.
so maybe at the final review of the warrant, we can have our own article, and the board can vote the number.
It'll definitely give us some.
Just to have something in reserve for. an
Would we
app-
recommend that that supersedes these petitions, or?
That's, I just proposed the idea, so I don't want to punish these applicants. And these petitions would have to be,
They're
these
citizens
would, they're
petitions.
citizen petitions, so they're gonna be on the warrant.
Yeah, it has to be on.
Article 4, are we done with that one?
Yep.
And a related one, Article 48, is the same thing, to go from beer and wine to all alcohol, and that is at 1044 Main Street. I don't see the name of the package
No.
store.
Yeah, that's Brothers Beer and Wine. That was the one that was on town meeting last year,
Last year.
but there was a quorum call before it got to that.
Yeah.
article.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
okay.
the previous one was a new one for Next Door Market,
Yeah.
but this one here is for Brothers Beer and Wine.
Article 49 is a citizen's petition asking for $10,000. It's the Clinton Youth Football and Cheer, asking the town to appropriate money not to exceed $10,000 to purchase a storage unit for Fuller Field at the upcoming town meeting. I don't think the leagues should be running the fields. I will say that, but it's a citizen's petition, so what can you do?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to comment on
Yes.
the same article. I've got nothing against youth football. My kids participated in it, in cheerleading and youth football. But I don't think the town should be buying storage facilities that, for individual leagues to be placed on town property. And if the Fuller Field Commission were supportive of this, they should have addressed it in their own operating budget. If they wanted a storage facility that would be placed on that property that's going to be used at their discretion, I'd be a little more supportive of the idea. But I recognize that it's a citizen's petition. It just seems an odd use of town money.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Yeah, just to get on the record, it's baffling to me too. I mean, it'd be one thing if Fuller Field had asked for this money and for the next article and we told them no, but there was no request for any of this, and I don't know why. So, I appreciate the initiative, but, so they do have Clinton Little League in here. I was wondering if one of the other, it's baffling to me. That's all.
Article 50 is Clinton Youth Football and Cheer with Clinton Little League are looking for the town to appropriate money not to exceed $28,000 to purchase portable bleachers for the use at Fuller Field. I have something to say about this because, and who knows what is true, but we have heard here that Fuller Field Commission was approached by Clinton Youth Football and Clinton Little League about these temporary bleachers, and we're told, well, you should do it up as a citizen's petition. Now, I recall, correct me if I'm wrong, because, hey, I could be wrong, but when they took down the existing bleachers, for my opinion, they took them down for no reason whatsoever, other than they wanted more room for baseball fields. Took down some perfectly usable bleachers. Didn't they tell us that they were going to replace those bleachers with some smaller bleachers?
That was my understanding, Mr. Chair.
Yes, and then to have these two leagues go and see them and have them tell them, well, you have to go. This is an abrogation of responsibility, it seems to me, of the Fuller Field Commission. And perhaps we could invite them in to, maybe I've got it wrong, but it seems to me high time that we do something to sort of change the nature of the Fuller Field Commission, because they act like they have a private fiefdom down that should only be used for what they sort of like. And, I mean, I think we should do something about it, and I think that citizens are required to get how many, 100 signatures, Michael?
10.
Just 10? Well, not 10. When the board had previously said, we're going to put in some smaller bleachers. And then, for 2 years now, it's handed in a budget that asks for nothing, which will not stop them to complain and say that selectmen never give us nothing. You've heard that. You've all heard that. Not mentioning that they never ask. So I think this is a disgrace. But I may be wrong, and we should give the Fuller Field Commission an opportunity to say, well, that isn't what happened. But that's what we hear happened. Anything else on Article 50?
Yeah, I'll just back up. I'd love an explanation, if we could get one. It makes no sense to me.
Yeah, just real quick, I mean, at that time, when they wanted to take down those bleachers, they were citing safety concerns, but they had, I believe you brought an engineer in, they looked at those bleachers, and they said all they needed was some safety upgrades, and they were fine. So to me, now we're gonna ask the taxpayers for $28,000 for something that need to be torn down. It just, to me, it's a waste of money.
Well, I think that we should have those bleachers, but I think it was the responsibility of the Fuller Field Commission to do what they said they were gonna do.
Exactly. The plan,
And
yeah.
not put the onus on the taxpayer.
Yeah. But I mean, those bleachers shouldn't have been torn down.
Well, they
in the
shouldn't have
first
been
place.
torn down as right, and they
No.
did it with, like I said, it's a private fiefdom, and something should be done.
But my understanding was that, decision aside, that when they decided to tear it down, that the plan was to come up with smaller, more mobile bleachers that could be, used in different configurations, and that they were gonna go forward with this, and then all of a sudden, they're hiding behind the leagues. I just don't understand, like I said, if we had told them no, then maybe doing this as a plan B, but they skipped plan A. I don't know what's going on over there.
We don't even know if Fuller Field Commission supports these two articles. Would they allow the bleachers to be put on Fuller Field, or the storage facility? Or who's gonna define what type of bleacher or what type of storage facility?
Who moves them around?
Who's gonna spec out this work, and and do we know that Fuller Field even wants this stuff down there? We need a better explanation.
Absolutely, I agree.
Okay, so, that's it for the annual town meeting warrant,
That was fun.
and we will go through it again when it is more complete, and at that time, we will be voting to approve the articles or disapprove them, with the exception of the citizens' petitions, which go on their own merit. Next item on the agenda is the fiscal year 2020 budget review. And for that, I turned the meeting over to Mr. Connolly, who I know requested that be on there and has
Yep.
something prepared.
What I'd like to present with my co-member, Mr. Kerrigan, is a conversation or a discussion of budget priority items for the subcommittee to represent to the Finance Committee. I want to try to explain something going into this, is that this year we're sort of in a unique situation. We've always traditionally used what we call one-time money that comes from a source that isn't repeating, like the tax base or state aid, to fund not positions or ongoing costs to the town, but only one-time expenditures, such as or expenditures that can be eliminated the following year if the revenue isn't there for it. And this year, we have more new growth available to us than we've had in years past, and it's one-time money that I'd like to present to the board to consider as our priorities going into the budget year, aside from the regular budget discussions. An increase to the stabilization fund, if the numbers allow it. And this is an evolving
The numbers are a moving target.
They're a moving target, but if the money's available, articulate the idea that we should increase our contribution to the stabilization fund and the OPEB fund to the amount of $200,000. Again, subject to availability of the money.
Each, $200,000
$200,000 each. In the past, I don't know, like 6 years, 7 years, we've been making basically $100,000 contributions to those two accounts. And this is an opportunity, this year may be the opportunity for us to beef that up a little bit. Another item would be to fully fund the police and fire department overtime accounts. Every year, we deliberately, intentionally underfund them and then get reserve fund transfers to cover those costs. So we'd like to be able to advocate that the town budget accurately reflect what we expect the overtime budgets to be in the police and fire. Snow and ice. We annually run a deficit in snow and ice as allowed by state law. So every budget year, we begin the season with a $300,000 deficit in the town's budget before we even start. And we're uniquely able this year to possibly eliminate that deficit and fund that account to whatever we come up with as a benchmark, the average of the last 3 years' costs, or the last 5 years, or something that gets us close. The downside to doing that is that we aren't able to deficit spend in that account. We can't drop down from that amount, so we have to be careful in the amount that we pick. We can never go backwards if we go forwards. We'd like to hold a discussion with the Finance Committee on funding some mechanism for sidewalk snow removal on town-owned property. We don't have a number, but we'd like to have the conversation both with equipment and all the other costs related to snow removal on doing a better job. If we're going to be advancing the board's desire to have property owners take care of their property and follow the bylaw, and we've made a commitment that we're going to do that, and we can't do that without funding. Another one-time expenditure, I don't know, 5 years ago, Mike, the early retirement was longer than that?
Probably longer than that.
Probably longer than that. We deferred the town, we accepted early retirement provisions under state law and deferred paying that liability over time. Currently, the outstanding liability is, I thought it was 135, but it might be more than that, Mike?
Yeah, somewhere in that neighborhood, yeah, we're probably about halfway through it.
Well, we'd like to advance to the conversation of paying that liability off this year. The school department annually defers its early retirement payoffs out over the 3 years. And I'd like to see if we can do something to get them caught up on that deferment, because it's basically deficit spending. They start the budget year knowing that in that next year they've got to pay these people off. It would be helpful if we could increase their budget in that area to cover some of that cost. There was a lot of conversation with the Finance Committee regarding funding of the High Street lighting project. The theory is that we could use the capital improvement fund to pay a substantial portion of that up front, and also attempt to use that fund to make any outstanding payments, any borrowed money payments, direct earmark revenue in that account to make those payments over time. We will be having conversations regarding the facility department, but that budget isn't finalized or in a draft that we can work with yet. So those are the recommendations I'd like to see if there's support from the Board of Selectmen for. To recap, increasing the contribution to the stabilization fund, OPEB fund, fully funding police and fire overtime, creating a budget for snow removal on town property, sidewalks, fully funding snow and ice removal, early retirement pay off that liability and increase or make available more funds for the sick leave buyback for the school department.
Okay. How would you like us to?
I'd make that as a motion that we set
Okay.
those items as a budget priority for the Board of Selectmen.
I'll second that.
Okay. Motion's made and seconded to adopt the priorities suggested by Mr. Connolly and Mr. Kerrigan, the Budget Subcommittee. Is there any discussion? I would just, oh, go ahead, Mark.
I was gonna say, just in discussion, I'd like to thank Selectman Connolly and Selectman Kerrigan for their hard work putting this together and going and work with the Finance Committee. So I know this is stuff we definitely need to do. I totally support it, so I just wanted to thank them for their hard work.
Thank you.
And I just know from talking with Mr. Connolly and that we do have the money to do this. This is something that is affordable, and it is to the fiscal good health of the town. I mean, it's contributing to the fiscal good health of the town. So I am in favor of this, and is there any other discussion? Being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And opposed? Motion's carried. Administrative business, late night closings for May of 2019.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded to approve the late night closings for May of 2019. There any discussion? Being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And opposed, motion's carried. Old and new business. Finance Committee transfer for fire overtime. Michael,
Just these next two requests, Mr. Chair, it's just from the fire chief. The fire department is out of overtime, as Mr. Connolly spoke to, looking at that item for the next fiscal year. They've had a number of employees out on injured on duty and other issues there, so the overtime is up in that department. So the two requests together would be more than what the Finance Committee has, but at least the fire chief wanted to put forward a proposal to at least to use some of that money to get him as far as he can. And then at the end of the year in June, when the board does all the transfers, interdepartmental transfers, that hopefully there'll be enough to cover either within his own department or by pulling from other accounts that we are gonna have a surplus. But at least this will allow him to try to clear up some of his deficit with the Finance Reserve Fund. So if the board votes to put it forward up to that request, obviously the Finance Committee can't fund all of it, but then they can determine on their own to do a partial amount for a little of each of what they want to give at this time. So it was $100,000 for overtime, and as the chief mentioned to the board, all his apparatus breakdowns he's had, and the cost that it was really, I think early on in the year, it kind of went through the budget pretty quickly. So this is just to kind of putting in kind of a round high number to get the Finance Committee discussing it and try to get some funding to offset the deficit.
what is the number?
Which,
Well,
One's 100 and the other one's 50.
or maybe
yeah,
I'm
it was
looking at
over
the
100
wrong
for
page.
overtime and 50
50
for
for the apparatus.
apparatus repair.
50,000 for the overtime and 100,000 for the apparatus.
Oh,
Okay.
No, 100,000 for the,
100,000.
For the
That's what I
overtime.
saw. That's not what I said?
I thought you had it reversed.
Or did I have them reversed?
Yeah,
So it's 100,000 for the overtime and 50,000
for apparatus repair.
for the apparatus. What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion that we grant the approval for the 100,000 for the payment overtime expenses. Do you want, can we do both at the same time, or this should be separate, right? Doesn't
Yeah, I
matter.
can do two separate
Oh,
motions.
we'll do separate motions, okay.
So,
Second.
so you said you
For the
motioned for the
100,000.
100,000.
For the overtime.
Okay. Motion made and seconded for the $100,000 transfer for the fire department for overtime. Is there any discussion?
Just on the discussion, Mr. Chairman, this catches back to what we were talking
Yeah.
about,
Yes.
budget priorities. We knowingly, or town knowingly, approved less money in the overtime account than was reasonable to expect the fire department to operate. So it's not we're hoping to eliminate that going forward.
Any other discussion? There being none, all in favor?
Aye.
And opposed, motion's carried. With regard to the request from the fire chief for $50,000 for apparatus repair, what's the pleasure of the board?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Second.
Motion is made and seconded to approve $50,000 for costs associated with apparatus repair. That's a finance committee transfer. Any discussion? Being none, all in favor?
Aye.
And opposed, motion's carried. Next item is Cable Television Commission. Mr. Jeff Swan of Clinton has sent a letter seeking appointment to the Cable Television Committee. And I have reviewed that letter. I believe that is my appointment, is it not, Michael?
Yes.
So we'll be appointing Mr. Jeff Swan of Clinton. He seems very well qualified to the Cable Television Committee.
Welcome him to the committee.
Indeed.
Goals and objectives discussion. Downtown decorative lighting streetlight project, I've already outlined, we have that $4.5 million. We have not yet had the full assessment from the engineers, but we're confident that $4.5 million will cover it. We'll get the official assessment soon. We also are planning to do a presentation to the board, to the full board, so the full board can see what we're planning to do and what we're hoping to get for our $4.5 million. And that will probably be at the next meeting, the meeting before town meeting. Any other goals and objectives to report on?
Just the OPEB oversight recommendations. The Government Affairs Committee is meeting next week with the auditor and, is it town council too? To educate ourselves as to what our liabilities are and what we should be doing moving forward.
Any other goals and objectives discussions? Any committee reports? The next item is committee reports.
Oh, I'm sorry, I jumped, oh, no,
No, it's all right, because they're
Yeah.
sort of connected,
Yeah.
you know?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
The Marketing Communications Subcommittee met on April 23rd. As a reminder to anyone out there, we have a townwide cleanup day on May 18th from 9 to noon. If you have any questions or have a group that you want to sign up, you can email me at skerrigan@clintonma.gov. We're looking forward to having a lot of people come out. Mr. Ngano's been working really hard on that. One other thing that we talked about that I'll probably talk to the town administrator about under separate cover is we're really interested in getting publicity out about town meeting and election day, and we're looking at a combination of old and new media approaches. So hopefully that will better educate the electorate and make sure that everybody knows when town meeting and the town election is. So more to come on that soon.
Okay. Any other committee reports? There being none, that concludes the agenda today, except for an executive session under Article 3, Public Works Union Negotiations. That item requires a roll call vote, and we will be going, assuming that it's approved, we'll be going into executive session and coming out of executive session and adjourning without conducting any other town business. A roll call vote being necessary to go into executive session. Mr. Kerrigan.
Aye.
And Mr. Connolly.
Aye.
And chair votes aye.
I'll be abstaining from the executive session for Public Works. I have a family member
Works for
employed, so
Public
I will not be partaking.
Okay, so we will be going into executive session and coming out and then adjourning without conducting any further town business.
Have a great night.